The weekend just passed, our nation commemorated the 75th anniversary of victory in Japan Day. I don't know about you, but it seemed to spring upon me with very little notice. I'm standing here by this plaque in St. Peter's, recalling all the names of those in the area who died in World War II. And as I look, I wonder how many of these people were involved in the war in Asia. The war in Asia has been on my mind actually quite a lot recently because I've been reading the latest John Grisham book called The Reckoning. And there, as part of the novel, it describes the American soldiers' terrors as they went on forced marches when they were captured by the Japanese, and then the terrors they endured in the prisoner of war camp in the Philippines. Now, I don't enjoy reading the gory detail of war books or watching them in war films. I know many authors love it, many people enjoy reading it. But actually, I think it is good for us from time to time to engage with what happened in the war, because otherwise sometimes it can seem a bit unreal or fantasy, like it didn't really happen to real people. If you watched any of the VJ 75 A Nation Remembers programme on Saturday, you'll have seen some of the awful images of suffering in prisoner of war camps in Burma. And I think understanding the intense suffering and cruelty grounds it in real people and what they endured, and helps us to understand the terrors of war and how badly people are affected. I remember talking with John Coles, a former member of this church, before he died, about his time in the war in Burma when he became a prisoner of war. Having to work on the railways with a lack of food, with intense heat, with terrible disease, just made me admire him, actually, thinking I'm not sure I could have coped physically or psychologically with what he and thousands of others had to go through. We know that many involved in war did suffer terribly psychologically, and that's why so many of our fathers and grandfathers wouldn't talk about the war, because it was so painful to bring back those memories. I'm going to read from Micah chapter 4, verses 2 to 4, where the prophet Micah is prophesying this. Many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths. The Lord will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He will judge between many peoples, and will settle disputes for strong nations far and wide. They will beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war any more. Every man will sit under his own vine, and under his own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid, for the Lord Almighty has spoken." Here the prophet Micah is prophesying the restoration for the remnant of the Jews from Babylon, when they would live back in their own land under God's rule. It rather idealises what it might be like, but it also points to the heavenly kingdom with that famous phrase where it says they will beat their swords into plowshares, hoes effectively. If we live in God's kingdom fully, living out his way, then there'll be no jealousy, no desire for power, desire for riches or land, no fear of other tribes or nations. In other words, there'll be no reason for war. I particularly love this image in verse 4, where it talks about every man sitting under his own vine and under his own fig tree. There's a sense that when you are fully content, there is no fear, you can just enjoy life. And for me, it's a lovely picture of our eternal home. Now, thankfully, war is not really an issue for us as individuals now. But as well as the many good examples of neighbourliness during this pandemic, we've also sadly seen some of the worst of people's behaviour too, haven't we? Out of selfishness or fear or holier-than-thou attitudes. There's been quite a lot of criticism or condemnation pointing out faults in people where they haven't followed the rules. There's been criticism of organisations and governments, and a little concern for how difficult this time is for everyone, how everybody is struggling together. Paul speaks in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 of God reconciling us to himself through Jesus, and our response is to seek to be reconcilers ourselves, not sort of people who are finding fault in everything, but rather believing the best in people, maybe understanding why people behave as they do, and helping people overcome those aspects of character that lead them to behave negatively. And so as we remember 75 years of the end of the war in Asia, victory in Japan, then we can remember those who endured so much to bring us peace. And I pray that all of us may strain to be peacemakers in our spheres of influence as we wait for the fulfillment of God's eternal kingdom. God bless you.